Ever had a neighbor from hell? A homeowners association president who seems to delight in making your life miserable? Then you're in the right place. Before we dive into today's story of neighborhood drama, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on more tales of community chaos and backyard battles. Now let's get into it. Sophie, a hardworking single mother, juggled the demands of her demanding career as a graphic designer with the chaotic, yet joyful reality of raising her two children, Emily and Ben. Their suburban home, nestled in the seemingly idyllic Willow Creek community, was supposed to be a sanctuary, a place of peace and quiet after long days. However, that illusion of tranquility had been shattered by the presence of Karen, the HOA president, a woman whose reign of petty rules and passive-aggressive behavior had slowly transformed Sophie's life into a constant battle against bureaucratic nitpicking. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. A slightly overgrown patch of lawn that Karen deemed unsightly, a misplaced recycling bin that violated the HOA's strict color-coded system, a friendly holiday decoration that exceeded the permitted size by a mere 2 inches. Each infraction, no matter how minor, was met with a sternly worded letter signed by Karen, detailing the violation and threatening escalating fines. Sophie, initially trying to be accommodating, attempted to reason with Karen, offering explanations and promising to rectify the issues. She even baked Karen a batch of her famous chocolate chip cookies, a gesture of goodwill that was met with a tight-lipped smile and a pointed comment about the excessive packaging. The situation deteriorated further when Karen, seemingly out of spite, began parking her gleaming white SUV directly in front of Sophie's house. The vehicle, a symbol of Karen's self-proclaimed eco-conscious lifestyle, despite its gas-guzzling nature, effectively blocked Sophie's driveway, making it a daily struggle to maneuver her own car in and out. Sophie tried everything. She left polite notes on Karen's windshield, explaining the inconvenience and requesting her consideration. She even attempted to engage Karen in a civil conversation at the monthly HOA meeting, a gathering that resembled less a community forum and more a staged performance of Karen's self-importance. Karen, however, remained impervious to Sophie's pleas, her responses laced with thinly veiled condescension and a complete disregard for Sophie's perspective. "Rules are rules, Sophie," she'd say, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness, "and we must all abide by them." The tension in the air grew thicker with each passing day, a palpable hum of resentment that vibrated through Sophie's house. She felt trapped, constantly walking on eggshells, anticipating the next petty grievance, the next passive-aggressive maneuver. She started avoiding Karen, taking detours to avoid bumping into her on the street, dreading the inevitable encounter, the smug look of satisfaction on Karen's face. The once peaceful Willow Creek community had become a battleground, with Sophie and Karen locked in a silent war of wills. One sweltering summer afternoon, after a particularly grueling day at work, Sophie returned home to find Karen's SUV once again parked squarely in front of her driveway. Exhausted and exasperated, Sophie parked her car on the street, a wave of frustration washing over her. She imagined Karen watching from her window, a self-satisfied smirk playing on her lips, reveling in her petty victory. Sophie's anger simmered, a slow burn that threatened to erupt. She muttered under her breath, cursing Karen's name and the absurdity of the situation. She felt like she was living in a sitcom, a bad one, where the overbearing HOA president was the villain and she, the harried single mother, was the perpetually harassed protagonist. The following morning, as Sophie rushed to get Emily and Ben ready for school, she noticed something glinting ominously in the morning sun. Spike strips. Someone had strategically placed spike strips across a portion of her driveway, effectively trapping her car. A cold wave of shock washed over Sophie, followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. There was no doubt in her mind. It was Karen. The audacity of it. This wasn't just about parking anymore, it was a deliberate act of malice, a calculated attempt to intimidate and control. The petty grievances, the passive-aggressive parking, the nitpicking about lawn ornaments, it all culminated in this moment, this act of blatant aggression. Sophie's blood boiled. She imagined Karen's triumphant smile, the gleam of vindictive pleasure in her eyes. This wasn't just about a driveway, it was about power, about control, about a complete disregard for basic human decency. Karen had crossed a line that Sophie wouldn't let her get away with. She carefully documented the scene, taking photos and videos of the spike strips, her mind already racing with plans. She called the police, reported the incident, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. She then contacted her lawyer, Ms. Johnson, a formidable woman known for her sharp wit and unwavering determination. Ms. Johnson listened intently to Sophie's account, her voice hardening with each detail. "This is more than just a neighborhood dispute, Sophie," she said. "This is harassment, and we're going to address it accordingly." Sophie felt a surge of resolve. She wouldn't be bullied. She wouldn't be intimidated. This was her driveway, her home, her sanctuary, and Karen had violated it. The battle lines were drawn. The petty grievances had escalated into a full-blown war, and Sophie, the single mother juggling work and family, was ready to fight. She was no longer just a resident of Willow Creek. She was a warrior, defending her territory against the tyrannical reign of the HOA president. The quiet cul-de-sac had become a stage for a dramatic showdown, a clash between two women, their opposing forces threatening to disrupt the peace of the entire community. The spike strips, a symbol of Karen's aggression, had inadvertently ignited a fire in Sophie, a fire of determination, a fire of righteous anger, a fire that would not be easily extinguished. She was ready to face Karen, to confront her, to expose her for the petty tyrant she was. The war had begun, and Sophie was ready to fight for her home, for her sanity, for her peace of mind. Sophie, now fueled by a potent cocktail of anger and determination, knew she couldn't just sit back and let Karen's aggression go unpunished. She understood that this wasn't just about the spike strips. It was about Karen's pattern of behavior, her abuse of power, her relentless campaign of petty harassment. Sophie realized she needed to fight back, not just for herself, but for everyone else in the community who had suffered under Karen's tyrannical rule. Her first step was legal action. Ms. Johnson, her lawyer, was a force to be reckoned with. She immediately filed a police report detailing the spike strip incident, emphasizing the potential danger and the clear intent to cause harm. She also sent a cease and desist letter to Karen, outlining the legal ramifications of her actions and demanding that she cease all forms of harassment immediately. The letter, written in Ms. Johnson's signature legalese, was a masterpiece of passive aggression, a subtle yet powerful weapon designed to intimidate and unsettle. While Ms. Johnson handled the legal front, Sophie focused on mobilizing the community. She knew that Karen's power stemmed from her position as HOA president, a position she had secured through manipulation and intimidation. Sophie decided to expose Karen's true nature, to reveal the woman behind the facade of the benevolent community leader. She started by talking to her neighbors, sharing her experiences and listening to their stories. She discovered a wealth of grievances, tales of arbitrary fines, unreasonable demands, and Karen's blatant favoritism towards certain residents. Slowly but surely, a network of resistance began to form, a group of residents united by their shared frustration with Karen's reign of terror. Sophie organized a clandestine meeting at her house, inviting those who were willing to stand up against Karen. The atmosphere was thick with tension, a mixture of fear and excitement. People shared their stories, their voices trembling with emotion. They talked about the anxiety of receiving Karen's letters, the humiliation of being publicly reprimanded at HOA meetings, the feeling of being trapped in a community ruled by a petty tyrant. Sophie listened, her heart aching for her neighbors, her resolve hardening with each shared experience. She realized that Karen's power was an illusion, that she thrived on the fear and silence of her victims. If they could break that silence, if they could stand together, they could break Karen's hold on the community. The meeting ended with a plan. They would attend the next HOA meeting en masse, armed with their stories and their collective anger. They would expose Karen's manipulative tactics, her abuse of power, her complete disregard for the well-being of the community. Sophie, however, knew that they needed more than just verbal complaints. They needed evidence. She began documenting every interaction with Karen, every email, every letter, every instance of harassment. She encouraged her neighbors to do the same, creating a digital archive of Karen's transgressions. While Sophie was building her case against Karen, she also decided to engage in a bit of her own subtle and not-so-subtle retaliation. She knew she couldn't stoop to Karen's level, but she also couldn't resist the urge to give her a taste of her own medicine. She started parking her car just a few inches over Karen's property line, not enough to be a clear violation but enough to annoy her. She accidentally oversprayed her sprinkler system, soaking Karen's meticulously manicured lawn. She even started leaving anonymous notes on Karen's windshield, subtle digs at her hypocrisy and her inflated sense of self-importance. These acts of petty revenge, while satisfying in the moment, were ultimately a distraction from Sophie's larger goal. She knew that true justice wouldn't come from petty pranks, it would come from exposing Karen's true nature and removing her from power. The day of the HOA meeting arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. Sophie, along with her newly formed coalition of disgruntled residents, entered the meeting room, their faces determined, their spirits high. Karen, sensing the shift in the room's dynamic, tried to maintain her composure, her usual smug smile faltering slightly. As the meeting progressed, Sophie and her allies took turns sharing their experiences, their voices growing stronger with each shared story. They presented their documented evidence, the emails, the letters, the photos, all painting a clear picture of Karen's abusive behavior. The room, once filled with Karen's sycophantic supporters, was now silent, the air thick with disbelief. Karen, her carefully constructed facade crumbling around her, tried to defend herself, her voice rising in desperation. But her words fell on deaf ears. The community had finally seen her for who she was, a manipulative tyrant hiding behind the guise of community leadership. The tide had turned. Karen's reign of terror was coming to an end. Sophie, the single mother who had simply wanted a peaceful life in her suburban home, had become a leader, a champion for her community. She had transformed her anger and frustration into action, turning the tables on Karen and exposing her manipulative tactics to the wider community. The quiet cul-de-sac, once a battleground between two warring women, had become a stage for a dramatic shift in power, a testament to the strength of community and the power of collective action. The spike strips, once a symbol of Karen's aggression, had inadvertently become a catalyst for change, igniting a spark of resistance that would ultimately transform the Willow Creek community. The HOA meeting was a spectacle, a dramatic showdown that played out like a courtroom drama, but with more passive-aggressive undertones and significantly worse coffee. Sophie, armed with her meticulously compiled dossier of Karen's misdeeds, felt a surge of nervous energy as she walked into the community hall. She glanced at her allies, a diverse group of residents ranging from the elderly Mr. Henderson, whose prize-winning roses Karen had once deemed too vibrant, to the young couple, the Millers, who had been fined for the unauthorized placement of a gnome on their front lawn. They all shared a common bond, a deep-seated resentment of Karen's petty tyranny. Karen, perched at the head of the table like a queen on her throne, attempted to project an air of authority, but Sophie could see the flicker of unease in her eyes. She knew that her carefully constructed facade was about to crumble. As the meeting commenced, Karen launched into her usual self-congratulatory monologue, outlining her achievements as HOA president, emphasizing the increased property values and the harmonious community atmosphere. Sophie stifled a laugh. Harmonious? The only harmony in Willow Creek was the synchronized grinding of teeth every time Karen opened her mouth. Sophie waited patiently for her turn, her heart pounding in her chest. She had rehearsed her speech countless times, but now, facing Karen and her remaining supporters, she felt a wave of doubt. What if they didn't believe her? What if Karen managed to twist the narrative, painting herself as the victim of a smear campaign? But then she looked at the faces of her allies, their eyes filled with hope and anticipation, and she knew she couldn't back down. When the floor was finally opened for community comments, Sophie stood up, her voice surprisingly steady. She began by outlining the spike strip incident, emphasizing the potential danger and the clear intent to harm. She then transitioned into Karen's pattern of harassment, detailing the arbitrary fines, the unreasonable demands, the blatant favoritism. She presented the documented evidence, the emails, the letters, the photos, each piece of evidence a nail in the coffin of Karen's authority. As Sophie spoke, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Karen's supporters, once so vocal, grew silent, their faces etched with doubt. Karen herself shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her carefully manicured nails tapping nervously on the table. She tried to interrupt Sophie to deflect the accusations, but Sophie wouldn't be silenced. She had waited too long for this moment, and she wasn't going to let Karen's manipulative tactics derail her now. Sophie's allies then took their turn, each sharing their own experiences with Karen's abuse of power. Mr. Henderson recounted the saga of the two vibrant roses, the Millers described the gnome incident, and a young mother, Mrs. Davis, tearfully explained how Karen had threatened to report her for unauthorized children's toys in her backyard. The cumulative effect of these stories was devastating. Karen's carefully constructed image of the benevolent community leader was shattered, revealing the petty tyrant beneath. The room was silent. Even Karen's most ardent supporters seemed to have abandoned ship. They looked at Karen with a mixture of disbelief and disgust. The woman they had once admired, the woman they had entrusted with the leadership of their community, had been exposed as a manipulative, vindictive bully. Finally, Sophie addressed Karen directly, her voice filled with a mixture of anger and sadness. Karen, she said, this isn't about personal vendettas or petty grievances. This is about your abuse of power, your disregard for the well-being of this community. You have used your position as HOA president to intimidate, harass, and control your neighbors. You have created an atmosphere of fear and resentment in what was once a peaceful community. Your reign of terror ends today. A wave of applause erupted from Sophie's allies. The silence was broken, replaced by a chorus of voices demanding Karen's resignation. Karen, her face flushed with anger and humiliation, tried to defend herself, but her words were drowned out by the collective voice of the community. She knew she was defeated. Her power had evaporated, her authority had crumbled, and her reign of terror was finally over. The vote was swift and decisive. Karen was ousted from her position as HOA president, her reign of petty tyranny brought to an abrupt end. The community hall erupted in cheers, a collective sigh of relief echoing through the room. Sophie, standing amidst her allies, felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had done it. She had faced Karen, exposed her true nature, and liberated her community from her grasp. The victory was not just a personal triumph for Sophie, it was a testament to the power of community, the strength of collective action, and the importance of standing up to injustice, no matter how small. The dramatic HOA meeting, the stage for Karen's downfall, marked a turning point for Willow Creek. The quiet cul-de-sac, once a battleground between two warring women, had become a symbol of hope, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. The spike strips, once a symbol of Karen's aggression, had inadvertently become a catalyst for change, igniting a spark of resistance that had ultimately transformed the Willow Creek community. The aftermath of Karen's ousting was like a breath of fresh air for the Willow Creek community. The oppressive atmosphere of fear and resentment that had permeated the neighborhood for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of relief and a renewed spirit of camaraderie. The once silent streets were now filled with laughter and friendly chatter, neighbors reconnecting after years of Karen-induced isolation. The tension that had hung heavy in the air, like a persistent summer humidity, finally lifted, replaced by a sense of lightness and peace. The new HOA board, elected in a landslide victory, was a stark contrast to Karen's tyrannical regime. They were a group of diverse individuals, genuinely committed to the well-being of the community. They prioritized transparency and communication, actively seeking input from residents and making decisions based on the collective good, not personal agendas. The arbitrary fines and unreasonable demands that had characterized Karen's reign were abolished, replaced by a more reasonable and flexible approach to community regulations. Sophie, much to her surprise, found herself thrust into a leadership role. Her courage and her unwavering commitment to justice had earned her the respect and admiration of her neighbors. She was no longer just a single mother juggling work and family, she was a symbol of hope, a champion for the community, a leader who had dared to stand up to tyranny and win. She didn't seek the role, but she embraced it, using her newfound influence to foster a sense of unity and collaboration within the community. She organized neighborhood picnics, initiated community gardening projects, and even started a book club, fostering connections and rebuilding the sense of community that Karen had so effectively destroyed. The transformation in Willow Creek was remarkable. The once divided community was now united, bound by their shared experience and their newfound sense of empowerment. They had learned a valuable lesson, that collective action could overcome even the most entrenched forms of petty tyranny. They had discovered the power of their collective voice, the strength of their shared purpose, and the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it's difficult. For Sophie, the change was profound. She could finally relax in her own home, without the constant fear of Karen's next petty act of harassment. She could park her car in her driveway without worrying about spike strips or passive-aggressive notes. She could let her kids play in the backyard without the anxiety of Karen's watchful eye and the threat of arbitrary fines. The peace that had been so elusive for so long finally settled over her, a deep sense of contentment that she hadn't realized she had been missing. One warm summer evening, Sophie sat on her porch, watching Emily and Ben play in the fading light. The sounds of their laughter filled the air, a melody that had been muted for too long. She looked around at the peaceful cul-de-sac, the vibrant flower gardens, the children playing in the street, the neighbors chatting amiably. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. She had fought a battle against petty tyranny, a battle for her community, a battle for her peace of mind. And she had won. The spike strips, once a symbol of Karen's aggression, had become a distant memory, a reminder of the darkness that had once threatened to engulf Willow Creek. But they were also a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of community, and a reminder that even the smallest act of resistance can spark a revolution. Sophie had learned that she was stronger than she thought, that her voice mattered, and that even a single mother could make a difference. She had found her voice, she had found her strength, and she had found her community. And in the end she had found peace. The quiet cul-de-sac, once a battleground, had finally become the sanctuary she had always longed for, a place where she could raise her children, build her life, and enjoy the simple pleasures of home, surrounded by the warmth and support of her community. The story of Sophie and Karen, the story of the spike strips and the dramatic HOA meeting, had become a legend in Willow Creek, a reminder that even in the most ordinary of places, extraordinary things can happen, and that even the quietest voices can rise up and make a difference. And that's the story of Sophie and Karen, a tale of petty grievances, dramatic showdowns, and the power of community. It's a story that reminds us that even in the most ordinary of places, extraordinary things can happen. Did this story resonate with you? Have you ever faced a similar situation in your own community? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of neighborhood drama, community triumphs, and the occasional spike strip incident, be sure to subscribe for more. We release new stories regularly, so hit that notification bell so you don't miss out.